Okay, well, thank you everyone for joining again. So my name is Ryan Knowles. I'm the Bus Rapid Transit Program Manager for CDOT Region 1, which covers the Denver metro area. So the BRT program is a newer unit within the Traffic and Safety Division of Region 1, and we are tasked with developing and delivering bus rapid transit projects on urban arterial state highways in the metro region. And so the first of the projects that we're working on, and the one in which we're going to be discussing alternative delivery today, is the Federal Boulevard Bus Rapid Transit project. And so we have been working on this project for roughly about 2 years at this point. We started the project in late 2023 and have made a lot of progress, which we'll discuss today. And we're at a point where we are going to recommend a delivery method for the project. So before I begin, I'd like to introduce Casey Valentinelli, who is our Alternative Delivery Program Manager at CDOT, and she will say a few things about the program that we have at the department.
Thanks, Ryan. So yeah, I'm Casey Valentinelli with the Alternative Delivery Program. I know a lot of you on the call, so it's great to see everybody logging in. This is just an outreach event to let you guys know that we are seeking to use alternative delivery with this project. I think most of you know we have a project delivery selection matrix, so we don't let teams just sit in a room and pick their delivery method. They have to go through a pretty robust process to select the most appropriate method for their project. This team did that. They had a great conversation. And then actually we revisited it recently because their PDSM had been completed a few months back. So we revisited it, looked at everything. And so they'll talk to you about the method that they've selected here, but just, you know, we do have that process in place. And then also state statute due to Senate Bill 21-260 with transparency and everything. We are required above 75 million to do this industry outreach event. It's a public event just to let everyone know what method the project is looking to use and why it was selected. And any feedback that you guys have is really encouraged. The next steps, this team has to take this to the chief engineer for approval and then to the Transportation Commission for approval. And they do report back any feedback or questions or anything that you guys have. They do send those on. And so if you guys have questions today, I know that they've got Q&A that you can respond to later this week. But if you guys have any feedback on using alternative delivery for this project, it really does help the team out in their ability to be able to use the method. So feel free. I know sometimes it can be crazy to talk in front of others, but just feel free to unmute and let the project know how you feel about the project and the delivery method. And it is very helpful. So I think that's all, Ryan. If you guys have any questions about the methods we offer at CDOT or how we do them, my office is always available. So you can reach out to me to talk about the program and the methods that we have.
Thanks, Casey. Well, let's get started. So next, let's talk about the overview for the meeting, the agenda. So today we will discuss at a very high level what the scope of the project is. And certainly if you have any specific questions on that topic, we can dig into more detail. But then we'll also talk about where we are with the project and the overall project development timeline, and then spend most of the time this morning talking about our selection process and our recommendation, which is a construction manager, general contractor, alternative delivery. Finally, we will cap the meeting with our next steps and open it up for questions from you all. So for an overview, the Federal Boulevard BRT project is an 18-mile long BRT corridor extending from 120th Avenue in North Westminster to Dartmouth Avenue in South Denver. And so if you're familiar with that length of Federal Boulevard, it is very different from north to south. And so certainly that will factor into the final design and the development of a construction strategy for the project. The BRT stations that will be part of the BRT project will have elevated platforms And on those platforms, there will be a number of different technology elements that all assist with keeping the bus moving quickly and boarding and onboarding passengers quickly as well. In total, we are proposing 74 individual BRT stations. So a big effort to really improve the point at which passengers will enter and exit the rapid transit system on Federal Boulevard. Additionally, we will also have sidewalks that connect to these stations, and they will interface with that elevated platform from a 6-inch rather general height to about 13 inches. And so there will be ADA ramps and curb ramps associated with that construction. And then roadway construction, entailing signal work, certainly some additional concrete and pavement work, particularly south of Alameda Avenue, where the pavement is in poor condition, and we're also proposing adding a northbound bus lane. Utility work, and then finally some bus lane striping and signing associated with the project. The total cost of the project is estimated to be $318 million. We are at 30% design, so that overall estimated cost could change. We certainly have a lot more work to do, and that could change. But right now, we are feeling pretty confident with our cost estimates. We've been working closely with our project team, our engineering folks at CDOT, and certainly the FTA to make sure that our cost assumptions are sensible and also realistic. And then finally, we are working very closely with a number of project partners, certainly RTD, who will be responsible for operating the BRT service when it is open. And then the City and County of Denver, which encompasses about half of the total project area, as well as the cities of Federal Heights and Westminster and unincorporated Adams County. And finally, we are also working with Dr. Cog, who is a significant funder in the project. The goals for the project are on the screen before you. I won't go through each one in detail, but suffice it to say that the primary goals for the project overall are, of course, improving safety on Federal Boulevard. So as we all know, Federal Boulevard has some pretty significant and long-standing safety issues, particularly with pedestrians. And certainly as we are looking to introduce more pedestrians to the corridor, we're going to make sure that they are able to access the BRT safely and that they feel comfortable doing so. Additionally, increasing the reliability of transit such that the travel times are competitive with other modes of transportation like driving is an important part of this project. And we want to make sure that the design that we have developed achieves that goal. And so it'll be very important to keep that as a guidepost in this next phase as we finalize the design and then certainly develop it, hopefully with a construction manager. And then finally, I'd like to highlight that Federal Boulevard is very diverse. It may be one of the most diverse corridors in the entire state of Colorado. And there are a lot of communities that we are interfacing with and engaging with. And as we continue the project, we're really going to need to focus on engagement and community involvement to ensure that the project is supported by the neighborhoods, the cities, the districts that it touches, but also that they feel a sense of ownership and really are excited about the project. That's an important thing for the Federal Boulevard BRT overall. Next slide. So for our delivery, we have some specific goals, and these aren't ordered in priority, but certainly a forefront goal is that we have committed to delivering the BRT service by January 2030. And certainly that can mean that the BRT is in operation while other elements of the project are still being implemented. But per our greenhouse gas planning standard, which came from our state legislature. We really do need to keep the 2030 revenue service goal at the top of our list in terms of delivery. We also want to prioritize safety and connectivity for all modes of transportation, not only when the project's implemented, but also before and especially during construction. And so thinking about how we're ensuring that people who are accessing sidewalks, who are driving, who are taking the bus, are kept safe during the construction phase, and also able to access the places they need to access will be a very important part of this project. And on that note, also coordinating with local businesses to ensure that the construction impacts that they may experience are mitigated to the greatest extent possible. And I'm sure you've all been aware of some challenges with construction projects ongoing or in the past, and certainly we want to build on what we've learned through those projects to ensure that we can meet that goal. We also want to maximize safety for workers and certainly the overall public, and so that'll be a big focus. And then finally, we want to maximize our project scope. So certainly with the funding, which I'll talk about here in a moment, we may have opportunities to add scope, or we may need to adjust scope. And so within the budget that we have available for the project, when we start construction, we want to ensure that we can do as much with what we have available as possible. Next slide. So as I mentioned, we have completed 30% design. We finished that earlier this year and have gone through a pretty robust review process, not only internally at CDOT, but with our project partners, the ones that I mentioned a moment ago. And so we are ready to begin the final design process. We expect to release an RFP in the first quarter of next year. So hopefully in the next month or two. And that will really be aimed at completing design through 100%. And so our goal is to have that well underway by mid-2026. We're also completing our NEPA process. So we've been working with the Federal Transit Administration to satisfy all the requirements of their NEPA regulations and ultimately a documented categorical exclusion at this point, although that could change. However, we have finalized the majority of the reports and the resources that we have needed to analyze, which you can see here. We have a number of other resources in review, and we expect that we will complete NEPA by the end of March, early April of next year. And the goal is really focused on completing the last parts of our historic eligibility resources. So section 4F and section 6F reports are the focus here. Next slide. So our funding status, as I mentioned, the total project right now is estimated at $318 million. So we have a number of sources already committed to help fund the project. We have also been working with the Federal Transit Administration to secure a $150 million small starts grant through their capital investment grant program. So we've gone through the first steps of a multi-step process to secure that funding. The latest milestone we have reached is that we received a medium-high rating through their evaluation process. And so a medium-high rating allows us to continue proceeding in the development process, ultimately to secure a grant agreement, which at the earliest would be in 2027. So we have a number of additional steps we need to take in regard to developing milestones prior to that potentially happening in the second half of 2027. However, in the meantime, we have $150 million dedicated to this project through our current 10-year plan. So those are in fiscal years 27 and beyond, 27 through 30. And so that will be the funding that is currently in hand to develop and deliver the project. And then hopefully with the FTA Small Starts Grant, the other half of the lion's share of the rest of the funding would come through in late 2027, 28, and 29. We're also working with our partners in CDOT headquarters through the Non-Attainment Area Pollution Mitigation Enterprise, also known as NAPME, to bring some of those dollars into the project. And we also are working on bringing other dollars into the project through programs where we've assumed scope from other ongoing work. And so all told, what we intend to do with this project is to implement as much of the scope as possible with what we have available in those fiscal years for construction, 27, 28, 29, and 30. So as Casey mentioned, we had our project delivery selection matrix workshop at the end of November, so several months ago. And we, at that point, had identified CMGC as the best option to move forward with for alternative delivery on this project. Based on some internal deliberation, we held an additional verification meeting. So we revisited the PDSM in September just to make sure that our assumptions had held true from late November of last year. And we did find that they did. So what we're recommending is to move forward with CMGC. And so the primary reason we have chosen CMGC relates to that 2030 revenue service goal, which is to be in compliance with our greenhouse gas planning standard, which applies to the Denver metro area. But there are other considerations as well, and I'll talk about those here in a moment. So we have a number of evaluation criteria that we use when we consider which of the delivery methods are best for these types of projects. So certainly complexity and innovation is a key focus area, as well as delivery schedule, the level of design the project is currently at when we're thinking about how best to move forward with delivery, cost considerations, risks with the delivery of the project, and then also some secondary factors that aren't included in those areas. So this is an overview of the matrix summary. So you can see in the table there are 3 categories: DBB, which is design bid build. It's the traditional method of delivering a transportation project at CDOT. CMGC, construction manager, general contractor, and then DB, which is design build. And so you can see that between design bid build and CMGC, there were a lot of similarities, but really the key factor that made a difference in CMGC over design bid build was the project delivery schedule. And then with design build, there were some benefits, but ultimately we felt that delivery method was not as beneficial for this project as the other 2. So why CMGC in particular? So thinking back about those evaluation criteria, design bid build is appropriate in the complexity and innovation category. Certainly that design bid build approach lends itself well to working out a lot of the issues that we still need to work out. However, we found that the collaborative approach that CMGC offers can really be a benefit to this project, particularly as we think about potentially packaging out the project and phasing it since it's such a large corridor. And then thinking about the traffic management components of it as well, especially around where there is more road work in the south part of the corridor versus the north part of the corridor where there is less. And so considering different traffic volumes through that 18-mile corridor, thinking about different types of impacts and certainly different destinations like Mile High Stadium. There's just a lot of different factors that we felt the CMGC approach might be more beneficial in addressing than design bid build. Additionally, this approach also allows us to start the BRT service before we've completed 100% of the construction. So certainly there's a number of things that we can prioritize in construction that would allow for the service to be implemented from a public transportation perspective while other construction is being completed. And then finally, this CMGC approach also allows us flexibility in addressing the business impacts, which I mentioned is a huge focus for this project as well. In terms of delivery schedule, so again, we are really focused on meeting that 2030 revenue service goal. And so certainly CMGC has the most benefit in this regard. Design build actually also would be beneficial in regard to delivery, but has some drawbacks in some of the other evaluation criteria. Design bid build, unfortunately, takes the longest. And certainly if we're needing to think about how best to break up the implementation of the BRT over the 18 miles, that could lend itself to a longer timeline and would put the 2030 goal in jeopardy. In regard to level of design, so as I mentioned, we're currently at 30%, which is a really good starting point for thinking about bringing in a construction manager. We see a lot of opportunity for the contractor to have input on constructability, certainly thinking through some value engineering approaches that could help with keeping the budget constrained. And then also, again, thinking about what packages make the most sense to begin delivery on, understanding that we're not going to have the whole 18 miles under construction at once. So that is a positive factor in the CMGC discussion as well. In regard to cost considerations, so the packaging approach that CMGC has will allow us to implement scope based on available funding. So in regard to that $150 million that we have secured, we know that we can go ahead and develop a package that would implement a level of scope up to that value. And then with the FTA process ongoing, should we run into any complications, we're able to still move forward with developing and delivering a project while we're working out issues on that end. So that's a benefit that CMGC offers that the others may not as much. And then finally, the severable packages also allow us to help mitigate risk, particularly around right-of-way discussions and third-party agreements with those partners that I mentioned earlier. And so we find that CMGC allows us to really manage risks much better than the other delivery methods. So just to recap the schedule, as you can see, we at the end of 2025 here have reached 30% design. As I mentioned, we have a number of things to accomplish in the next year where we think bringing in a CMGC approach will be beneficial, ultimately with the construction manager input through the rest of design, as well as thinking about right-of-way impacts and how best to mitigate those as we are in our right-of-way process. And finally, the revenue operations, you can see we are aiming for 2030. But as you can also see in the schedule, we do think that there's an opportunity there to extend construction if needed, because that is a very aggressive goal. So for our schedule overall and our next steps, so we will accept questions and answers about this recommendation, or questions about this recommendation, and provide answers through the end of the day of next Tuesday, December 23rd. So certainly we'll have question and answer session today, but then we also have a Google form that is online, and we can share the link in the chat where you can submit questions as well, and we will respond to that. With the question and answer period wrapped up, we will update our PDSM based on that feedback and finalize it for review by our chief engineer and the Transportation Commission, which will occur next month. And so we're hoping to have approval for our recommended delivery method following that Transportation Commission meeting next month, and then really entering the next phase of the project. So as I mentioned, we expect an RFP to be out for final design either next month or in February. We'll also be issuing an RFP for an owner's representative. You can expect that in spring of next year. And then the CM RFP would also be in spring of next year. So really hoping to have that wrapped up by March, April at the latest. And then finally, the milestones. So we're anticipating and planning for construction to start in late 2027. And then, as I mentioned, we really do want to have the BRT service online by 2030. Certainly, construction items like signal work or sidewalks, things that may not be directly associated with the BRT operations, could extend beyond that date if needed. And with that, we'll open it up for questions. Feel free to just unmute if you have any, or pop them in the chat if that is more comfortable for you.
Hey, Ryan, Jim Moody with the Colorado Contractors Association. Quick question. So how far along do you expect the design to be by the time the CMGC contractor is selected?
We don't expect it to be very far along. So with our internal contracting process, we expect that we'll have the next design contract in place roughly by summer, and then the CM contract would be hopefully no longer than 2 or 3 months after that.
Okay, so it'll still the selected CM will still be entering closer to 30% design, not 60%.
Yeah, our intention is not to have reached 60% design by the time the CM is on board. So, we'll make sure that we have that input in the 60% design milestone.
Okay, great. Appreciate it.
Like I mentioned before, any feedback or questions that you guys have really does help this team. So if it's too risky to say in front of everyone else, if you do want to give them a Q&A, or even just we're excited about CMGC for this project, or we don't think CMGC is a good fit for this project, any feedback like that really does help the team for going forward with approvals. The full PDSM will be posted on their website. If you guys have trouble finding any of this documentation on their website or through my program website, please let me know. That the official PDSM won't be posted until they have full approval, but if you guys need a copy of a draft, we can post that as well. So just let us know.
Thanks, Casey. And then one just quick technical question in case anybody asks. So if anybody wants a copy of this slide presentation and didn't already do screen shots, will it be posted on the project website, or what was the best way to get a hold of it?
We can certainly share a PDF, but we have recorded the presentation today, so our intention would be to put the video online.
Okay. Thanks. I'm guessing some people might be interested in just the slides as well,
Sure.
In addition to the entire presentation. Thanks.
Any questions about the scope of the project? I know we covered that at a very high level.
Is there a preference on which areas to start in based on just existing bus ridership?
That's a great question. So I would say that the ridership is highest in the core of the corridor, so around central Denver. So that may be a good place to start. Certainly, though, we want the construction manager to weigh in on the complexity of the construction, particularly around the different scope elements that are in the central part of the city.
Thank you.
I would also mention that, just to add to that, the traffic volumes are obviously the highest in the central part of the corridor, so that will be a consideration as well. I saw maybe a comment in the chat. At what point is the PDSM required? It seems like 30%. You've lost the benefit of doing design build, and your summary showing design build is the lowest delivery method supports. Then maybe PDSM should be started earlier. That's a good question. I think Casey can probably address that one, although I will say that one consideration with design build is that, or one of the points of discussion that we had in our workshop, that with some uncertainty of a few of the funding sources and not having them 100% secured, that made design build a little more challenging. But Casey, do you want to weigh in here?
Yeah, I'll just say there's no requirement for any project to do a PDSM. If they are interested in doing an alternative delivery, anything other than traditional design bid build, it is required that they do one before they pursue that method. But a project doesn't have to do one to do design bid build. I do a lot of outreach with the regions to try to get them in as early as possible. It's kind of a balance game between knowing their scope and budget. We want to make sure that we're looking at the appropriate scope when we're assessing the project for these delivery methods, but I do like to get them as early as possible. And so, yeah, I agree with your point. I think design build is great at 0% design. So.
I think I saw another hand.
I'll just, I guess, a little bit piggyback on what Ryan was saying with the funding. For this, the CM contract, and I don't want to speak for the team, but the CM contract will cover the full project. So the pre-construction and design will be for the full project, and then the construction packaging will come out for funding that's available.
Was there another hand? I thought I saw one pop up. Well, Gerardo, do you want to go to the next slide that shows our contact information? So if you need to contact me or Casey, here is the way you can do so. And thank you for joining us this morning. As I mentioned, we have our Google form online, and that is the way we prefer to receive the questions. But certainly, if you have any questions about that, feel free to reach out. And yeah, we really appreciate your time and your collaboration. I know a lot of the folks who are on this call, and we've had a lot of discussions over the past year plus. And so it's been really good to talk with folks about different considerations around this project and ultimately BRT projects that we're going to be taking different approaches on as well. So thank you very much, and happy holidays.
I just want to give a quick reminder that the Q&A is non-confidential. So if you submit a question, it's non-confidential, and the questions and answers will be posted on the website as well.
Yes, thank you, Casey.
Also, happy holidays.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Happy holidays to you as well.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you. Casey, do you have anything for me?
I don't. Thank you, Stina. Thanks for listening in.
All right.
Thanks, Casey.
Yeah, you guys did a great job.